Hi, and welcome to a Small Medium at Large podcast. I'm your host, Gail Heisen, bringing you intimate stories that heal. Today, today's guest is Lindsey Scharmyn. Lindsey experienced poverty, trauma, and incredible paranormal experiences in her youth. She became a school teacher and then found a different path to teach and help others on their spiritual journey. She started her podcast, Rogue Ways, and she also teaches tarot as well as doing tarot readings. She has written many books, and this year she released a new book, All Endings Are Beginnings, available on Amazon. Lindsey comes to us today from Colorado. We met recently when I was a guest on her show, Rogue Ways. She felt to me like a kindred spirit, and I just feel we have so much in common. So I wanted to be able to share and have her as my guest so I could ask her questions about her life. Though she looks so young, I'm not sure that she could have had all these experiences, but okay. Let's welcome Lindsey here today.
Oh, thank
Welcome,
you so
Lindsey.
much. Thank you so much, Gail. I get that a lot. I look young and I feel young. My brain still thinks I'm very young. But by the calendar, this is my 40th time around the sun. So
Oh, well, since I've hit the 66 ones, you do look very young to
yeah,
me.
I guess it's all perspective, right? It changes as we go.
So can you share with us, as intimate as you want to go? I always like to start off with what your childhood was like, because I feel like these experiences we've had as a child, and I know certainly from mine, these traumas and other things that have happened have shaped us to be who we are today. And other people look at it sort of like, oh my goodness, you lived through that. And I think you and I both have that different attitude, like, oh, it's what made me who I am. I don't feel, I'm happy to share how I've grown from all those experiences. So we'd love to hear about them today.
Absolutely. I agree with you completely. And I know it shocks people too, because in addition to people always feeling like I'm very young, they think I am very like lily pure white, and I couldn't have possibly ever experienced anything negative or like been in the darkness ever. And then I shock them with the truth. So
Right.
because it's so different. And to me, I feel like, well, I've always been this person, but there was just sort of layers on top of it that I had to sort of peel away and realize, oh, that part wasn't really me and this part wasn't really me, but the core, like, it's always been there. And I think we can all relate to that. You're always the same person, but you have various different experiences you go through and lenses that you view the world through, and you try on different things, and then eventually you become more and more truly like just who you really are, not all those layers as well. And but as a child, I definitely went through some extreme trauma. And again, when you're living through it, for me at least, didn't really seem bad. Like, it was okay. And I didn't really have a lot of perspective on it because we just always were exceptionally poor. And I remember waiting. My first memory ever actually is of waiting in line to get food from what must have been some kind of commissary or food bank or something. And I was like 1.5 years old in a little stroller, and it was very, very cold. And my mom put a block of what I now know is like government cheese in my stroller for me to hold. Like, that's my first memory. And I wasn't especially perturbed by it. It was fine. I loved government cheese. In fact, my mom was so embarrassed when she finally started being able to buy or acquire cow's milk, that I hated cow's milk. I was like, where's that powdered stuff? That's the good stuff. And she was like, my daughter doesn't even know what cow's milk is, and she likes powdered milk more. So she had to slowly cut in the cow's milk and get me off of powdered milk and onto real milk, because that's all I had ever known was powdered milk. I loved powdered milk. I loved government cheese, and these things were not negative to me. That was just what we had. And because we were very poor, we had gardens and we had chickens and we had, animals like goats, because they're the
Where
way that
were
you get
you?
food too, right?
Where were you growing up?
Well, I was born in Bismarck, North Dakota. And then when I
Uh-huh.
was 2, we moved to Whitefish, Montana. And then when I was just turning 4, we moved to Whidbey Island, Washington. And so I actually grew up in Washington on Whidbey Island. My mom still lives there today, and some of my family still lives there today. And it was just luck, really, because Whidbey Island now is considered kind of posh, and you're lucky if you get to live there. It's outside of Seattle. And, but back then it was not, it was very rural. It was very poor. There were some wealthy people who would have their vacation houses there, but the rest of us were very rural, poor, folks. So a lot of my friends were in the similar situations. And yeah, that was just the life. I spent a lot of time outside. I spent a lot of time talking to trees and not realizing that other people didn't talk to trees, hanging out with my animals, talking to animals, not realizing people didn't talk to clouds and animals and trees. I had no idea that was weird. I'm still now understanding that was like a gift that I had, that I just thought everyone did that. And I read a lot because that was what we had to do. We could play outside, we could read. That was basically all we had. And so I think this was actually very lucky. When I look back and I think, well, yeah, we lived in poverty, but I never experienced want, and I never experienced negative, or lack or any of this. I just thought this was life, and I got to enjoy things that I think a lot of other kids didn't as much. I think back in that time period of the 80s when I was growing up, it was more likely that you were going to be playing outside and more likely that you were going to read than it is today, unfortunately.
It is unfortunate because the children today, if you put them outside, they don't really, they want electronics, they want technology. And I find that very sad. I also was a tree lover and a tree hugger. And when the city of New York cut down my tree in front of my house because it was too old or whatever, I felt like my arm had been cut off and I lost my best friend. We used to crack rocks, with a hammer to find, crystal things inside them. Now, if you said that to a kid today, oh, here's a bunch of rocks, have fun.
Like, these don't glow, these don't make noise.
Yeah. So tell me, what kind of traumas were you experiencing in childhood? Because one of my theories from speaking to so many different people about their psychic or paranormal experiences is often they have had trauma in their childhood. And there's something about that I don't know if it's what opens up another channel for us or what exactly happens, but I know that it happened for me that way.
Yeah, no, I definitely have seen the same when in talking to people too. And there is something about it. And maybe, like you said, it is something that you either kind of retract from and go further into a shell, or you come out from and having opened up even more of yourself in order to heal yourself is maybe what it is. But basically, I think eventually, having lived in poverty and knowing it, had some sort of trauma, but really it wasn't that. It was my father had fought in Vietnam against his will, and in really shady ways that, now we know that we were in Cambodia, but at that time, especially, it was like, we weren't in Cambodia. Definitely we weren't in Cambodia. And he was in Cambodia and he couldn't talk about it with people. And, he was an excellent sniper, an excellent marksman. And so he perhaps killed more people than the average person in Vietnam because of that, because they used him in a lot of situations when, and then because of that too, he was somehow forced to do a second tour against his will. Because, the thing was, you do your tour and now you're free, you go back. Well, not for him. For some reason, somehow they kept him. So that was this extra trauma. So he came back from Vietnam really, really traumatized. And I think he did a really great job trying to live normally after that. But by the time I was like 9 or 10 or so, it all started really falling apart and he couldn't hold it together anymore. And, he was really deeply in alcohol abuse and just not coming home for long periods of time. And when he did, he was recovering from whatever bender he had been on and just angry and really, really dark. And so there was a lot of fights and there was a lot of absence and there was a lot of chaos. And it definitely didn't help us put food on the table to have him not around. And so my mom was very, very stressed out. Watching her go through that was its own kind of trauma for me, because she was barely holding us all together with this now fourth child, basically, in the form of her husband, who was just, a drain on her resources. And it was really sad because they were, I think, genuinely in love, and I think that was the love of her life. And to watch him go through that and their love be just desecrated and destroyed, and and then he died when I was 11, which is perhaps its own grace in some way, now looking back on it, that he got to be free of his misery and agony, because I saw in him how much it hurt him that he was hurting us so much. He didn't want to do that, but he didn't know how to heal. And we didn't have a very good concept even back then of trauma and what people from Vietnam had gone through and what they took back with them and how little they had a chance to heal from any of that. So, you know, as much as I don't want to excuse really horrible behavior, I understand why it happened that way.
Well,
And all of it was its own trauma.
I think that, you know, whether it's your ancestors or your parents, we still carry the traumas that they go through, even when we're not living with them and seeing it, even if it's from another generation. And so we carry that in our body or in the invisible plane or in our DNA or whatever you want to call that place. We did a ceremony once with Vladimira, a Siberian shaman, where you took off your shirt and laid on your stomach and you had another person drip hot wax down your spine in order for you to connect to the ancestors whose traumas you are carrying with you. So I don't think that your dad was in any way, his actions aren't anyway an acceptable way to be, but what he went through, none of us can even understand. And there is more suicide, you know, from people who've been in the military than any other, you know, the amount of suicide is unbelievable in this area. So the fact that your father ended up having to become alcoholic, having to do these different things, we have to, it's so important that we're sharing this right now, because there's a lot of people who don't talk about the Vietnam War or how those ripples came in and affected our Lindsey Scharmyn.
Yeah.
And it did in a deep way. And you don't know, being the psychic and intuitive person you are, whether the souls of the dead people that he might have been carrying on in his life and space weren't coming and visiting and affecting you.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And um, I feel, you know, we're blessed to have a gentleman who lives on our property that is a Vietnam War veteran. And I'm much older than you. And during the Vietnam War, you know, we were 13, I was 13 years old. We were out protesting with our teachers from school. The teachers would cut school and meet us on the corners. Everybody was against this war and everybody was participating in it. And I even left New York with a draft evader who was the first love of my life. So we were hiding while the FBI was chasing us, because he was supposed to be sent off to Vietnam and go be in the army. So it's a story that rings true for us young teenage people. And now to hear what happened, as they say, is that when they came home, they couldn't talk about this to anybody. My friend tells me that the reason there's so much need for alcohol or intensive pot smoking is because the veterans needed to block out the dreams that were coming and haunting them. So you as a child were really being directly affected. It wasn't like you were hearing, oh, I heard my dad went there or something. You were really living with his trauma, and that's big trauma.
Yeah, it's exactly that, you know, and the part of it that affected me a lot, for whatever reason, probably the same reason that I talk to clouds and trees, he would talk to me more than anyone else about it. And I had no idea what he was talking about most of the time, but I knew it was very important and that I just sit there and just listen. And he would cry and he would tell me these things. And I have, the only memory I have of that is remembering this is really, really important. And it's really, really bad. Like whatever he went through is really bad. And being sort of just terrified that like, this is what adults could experience. You know, there's a level of childhood that you should kind of feel safe, and like adults adults are safe and they're going to keep you safe. And seeing an adult go through this, you're like, adults aren't safe and I'm not safe, none of us are safe. And that's kind of where a lot of trauma comes from, is your brain being incapable of feeling like things are safe and calm and stable. Things were not safe or calm or stable. But I'm also grateful that I was able to, in some way, help him release some of that. And that experience too has become a deep part of me, you know, where I do have a deeper experience and understanding of how to help other people release some of their pain and trauma. You know, I'm not a licensed anything except a teacher, but that's part of the work I do now. And that's part of what I'm really grateful to be able to do, because I think, you know, intuitively, I had to understand back then how to listen and how to be present without taking any of that on. Like, this is not mine. I'm not, you know, this is not going to attach to me. I'm not a part of this. I'm just witnessing because people need that in order to heal.
Yes. Well, that's a great. So tell us about what it is you're doing and working with people.
Well, so now after teaching, I realized, you know, I love teaching and I am a teacher, but my real instinct and my real passion in teaching is for reaching out and, you know, touching people's souls and helping them to whatever they're doing, no matter what it is, big, small, little, in between, like, you know, accomplishing something or feeling a new thing or whatever. And so when I wanted to leave teaching, I just, you know, found my synchronistic guided way towards offering some of these things I had always been doing to people more generally. And that's been its own kind of discovery to sort of try and put into context and to name the things that I do. It's hard because a lot of it has come, you know, much differently from your own path, I think, and really similarly in some ways too. But, you know, you've had some experiences, Gail, where you have a tradition and someone who holds this tradition and this lineage invite you and guide you and offer you these things. And so you have this more, I think, clear, maybe I'm totally wrong, but more clear idea of like, okay, well, this is my role and here's what I call it. And here's how I can offer it to people. Maybe not, maybe I'm wrong. But I'm like talking to people and they're like, well, what are you? Are you a shaman? And I'm like, I don't, if you want to call me that, you can. Having worked with shamans and been taught by many shamans in various ways, I see how it's very similar. And in fact, I don't see much of a difference, but I also have never been formally invited to take that title. So I'm not going to call myself that. Right. And then people are like, well, what do you do? And I'm like, well, one of the things I do is like a guidance session. And they're like, well, what's a guidance session? I'm like, well, I sit down with you and you tell me what you need. And they're like, what do I get out of it? I'm like, you get messages from source. And they're like, oh, are you a channeler? I'm like, kind of. Like sometimes a message will come directly through and I'll share that with you. And they're like, oh, are you a medium? And I'm like, sometimes someone who's passed on will come through and share a message with me to share with you. And I'm like, but I can't promise it. I can't say when you sit down with me for a guidance session, we will absolutely talk to your ancestors. We might not, because I'm not in charge of that.
I'm just saying, if I put my face on your body right now, those were exactly my words.
Oh, good.
On an interview I was on recently, almost word for word, because that's exactly how I feel. And I am grateful to have been given the shamanic initiation from Zagda, from Mongolia, for the Buryat, as a Buryat shaman, because it finally gave me the little package or whatever you want to call it. I always felt like I didn't have a shingle, I didn't have a title. And I'm just like you. Well, yeah, sometimes I do things that's called a medium. Sometimes it's clairvoyance. Sometimes I'm hearing voices. But I never say that somebody, oh, I'm just a medium or I'm just a,
Yeah.
I seem to be able to have access to all these different things. And like you, I always, you know, felt the kinship to bugs and plants and nature and all this. And it was just someone else deciding that I should be this shaman. It wasn't me who decided to do that.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly it. And that makes me really happy the more I talk to you, the more I'm like, oh, cool. I am more normal than I think. But there is a piece of it where it's like, you know, it's almost like, well, we need permission, you know, to finally offer these gifts to other people in a more formalized way. And I never got that permission really, except I finally just understood it was within myself. And that I was being called to do this over and over and over again. And finally, I just answered that call, and I've had to just get over like what to call myself or how to describe it to people. And I, you know, so I say to people, well, I'm a spiritual healer, I'm a mystic teacher, and I'm a guide and a teacher if you want that from me. Those are the things I offer. And I do tarot and
I was going to say, because I think I'm going to sign up for one of those. I read about it on your website today. And you were saying you teach tarot and you also do tarot readings. And so that to me is like having a medium or a place to be able to say, oh, let me give you a reading. And then you're able to share things with the people, and they somehow it's easier for them, I think, when you have the cards. But I'm sure you could do whatever that you said to them without having the cards there too.
Yeah, well, and that's the guidance session, is basically a tarot reading without tarot cards. Kind of,
Uh-huh.
but it's a little bit more directed by the participant, because once you're in a reading, the cards are out and we're talking about whatever your soul or your guides or whoever you feel like is guiding these cards for you. We're just in that and we're rolling, right? Whereas in a guidance session, you could be more like, okay, now let's talk about this, and like, okay, what about this, and here's this specific question about this thing. And so they're different, but they're very similar. And I had that same realization. I think some people feel more comfortable with the cards because it's like a fixed, it's like a product. It's, this, there's going to be this layout. It's a little bit more mapped out and
And it's
comfortable for
also
some
physical.
people.
They can see the card. It's hard to say to some. I mean, when people ask me, well, how did you know that this was going to happen? And I say, I can't explain to you. I just know. And that's very hard to understand. I know you understand, but it
Yes.
was hard for them to understand. What do you mean you just know? But so do you find that you have auditory and visual? I'd love to hear about the paranormal experiences you've had.
Yeah, it's they're all very different, right? And it's kind of like this thing we're talking about, where it's like sometimes it's like being a medium, and sometimes it's like being psychic, and sometimes I see things, sometimes I hear things, sometimes I have visions, sometimes I have dreams. Like, it's just all these different ways. And then sometimes it's none of those things even. It's just something where I'm like, oh, I just know. I just feel this inside. I just know for sure. I have no doubt in my mind.
Smorgasbord of paranormal.
Yes, yes. And then I feel like the more I talk about various ones, some people are like, she just must be a liar, because there's like too many, because some people have like a ghost experience or a UFO experience and I'm like, I have just so many that I can't sometimes even remember which ones would be interesting for people to hear about because I don't know which ones to choose. So I have done this other thing where I've gone out every time I remember an experience I've had, I go list it, and I have this document where I'm like collecting them, because I'm like, oh yeah, if people ask me and they want to hear, I can like look at this document and just pull one out of the bag.
That's a very great idea. I had to organize that once. That was when I met Dean Radin and Russell Targ. They wanted a list of all my psychic experiences. And I
Like,
thought to myself,
how?
I never thought about it. It's like a lifetime's worth of stuff. But once you start going, the stories start flowing out.
Yeah.
So let's start. I have not actually interviewed too much about UFOs with anyone. So maybe we could start on that more subject that I think used to be more taboo, but now that it's in the regular, news and television, I think it's more acceptable to speak about this. So can you share something, or, if you have many, I guess pick one you think our
Yeah.
listeners would really enjoy, that you found one you enjoy sharing.
Yeah. I guess I'll just talk about how it kind of started. I would actually, the first time I remember having an experience with something that is the best I can call it as UFO, because it's unidentified, it's in the sky, and it's shining. And long since after this story I'm about to share, I have discovered I was led to a book. This is the other thing, is my life like plops books in front of me. I'll dream about them and then I'll see them in life, and I'll have to buy them and read them. And there's always something really that I needed in there, right? Well, one of the books I found was shaman writing this book, and they were talking about the wogies, and the wogies are these lights in the sky that are our spiritual ancestors, our star ancestors, come back to share with us, especially, if we have a path that they need us for, or, an experience that they need to share with us for our own soul path. And so I was like, oh, I finally have this word for it, wogies, because I don't think they're like aliens in this traditional sort of sense of the word. I don't think they're necessarily these little gray beings and that they're in a ship made of metal. I think it's more about consciousness and, wherever they reside. I just think it's a parallel sort of dimensional space, not necessarily like some world billions of light years away. But when I say wogie, no one knows what that means. So I go back to UFO a lot. But I was having this experience, and I think that it was when there was that huge, the huge tidal wave or tsunami over in India. Do you remember that?
No.
I can't remember exactly, but I think that's what it was. It was that or some similar really horrendous natural disaster that killed just thousands of people. And I felt it, I felt something really bad happening. And I thought maybe someone I knew had died or something, and then shortly thereafter the TV was on or something, and I heard this and I just started crying. And I was pretty young and no one was home, and I was crying, and I like kind of fell on the floor crying, and very sensitive person. So I was very upset by thinking about all the animals and all the people and all of the work and all the lives, and just, so I was crying. I was like, why is the world so hard? Like, life is hard enough. And then things like this happen. I'm not even over there, and this is how it's affecting me. And I was sort of like lamenting towards the sky. I was looking out my window at night and I was crying about this. And I was like, what is the point of any of this? Is there a point to any of this? And just then this like flash went across the sky of sort of like sparkles of light. So it was, and I was like, what was that? It wasn't a meteor. It wasn't a comet. There's no way a plane could have done that, because it was like multiple places really, really quickly. But I just got this feeling of sort of peace, and like this answer to my question that like, yes, there is a point, there is a purpose, and it is hard and it is painful. You just take a deep breath, and then we move through it, and then we rebuild, and that can even be its own blessing. And I was just sort of receiving, and I understand it a lot more at the time, but at the time I didn't really understand that I was actually receiving information and energy from this entity or consciousness that was responding directly to me. And it was actually a really beautiful experience. And then I couldn't share it with anyone, because I was like, well, I'm just probably crazy. Like, I was
How
crying
old
in
were
the
you?
sky and lights are interacting with me. I think I was 19 or so. And now that I'm saying that, I know that I had had previous experiences before that. But I think I kind of tucked them away as too weird to be real.
Were any of them, I've only had one of those kind of experiences. And I thought I was dreaming, but I was sure I wasn't. So, and it was a timeless kind of experience. So I don't really know how long I was gone and when I got back, but it felt like it was like my body was here, but the rest of me had gone off elsewhere.
Yeah.
Have you had any experiences like that?
Yes.
Can you elaborate on that? Because I'm trying to learn about this. I didn't share
Yeah.
it with anybody until I started going on these podcasts and doing these podcasts. And half the people that interview me, when I look at the background, like I have a lot of masks in my room from travels around the world and things. But these people I've been talking to all have pictures of aliens and paintings of aliens and statues of aliens and all these aliens. And I'm thinking, how come every show they got aliens on me?
Yeah. It's really interesting to think about, if these entities could sort of interact with people who were more open or had these sort of skills and abilities, and that it's easier for them to interact with you, or that we're maybe just more open-minded too, might be part of it. Because one of the experiences I had, before I talk about that sort of dreamlike out of body venture that I've also been on, one of the experiences I had was with other people, and there's 5 other people, I want to say, and we were in a car, and it was a very direct experience. And it was another one in which I was looking up at the sky lamenting. Anytime I look up at the sky and lament, I get a response. And I was lamenting again about like, wow, this world is insane. Like, is there ever going to be any good that comes from this? And this very bright light appeared, and I was like, that's too bright to be a star. And then as soon as I thought that, it disappeared and appeared right next to me. I mean, like 4 feet from my face. And we were on a boat, and it was a ferry boat. The windows on a ferry boat when you're in your car are just open. There's no glass usually. And it was, yep, Washington State. And it was just right on the other side of this window, just floating there. It's super stable. If it was another boat, it would have been at least moving a little bit. It was not moving at all. And then I thought, that's a very strange light. What is that? And I was like, you guys, look at this light. And when they looked, it split into 3 lights. And I was like, well, that's not normal. And then it started moving in sync with each other and making very intricate designs quicker and quicker as it went. Everyone in the car saw it. I saw it. It happened for maybe like a minute or so. I don't know, it seemed like forever, but I'm sure it wasn't actually that long. And it was changing colors. The three lights were changing colors in sync with each other and making these designs. And it was very fascinating and mesmerizing. And then they stopped, and then they went back into one light, and then they zoomed forward. And then the whole ferry boat slowed down. So the ferry captains saw this light too. So I have the 5 people in the car who saw it and the captains who saw it. They slowed down, they turned on their spotlight. The boat stopped actually. So I was like, what? Like, I have no idea what is happening or how it's happening or what this means or anything else, but I know the boat stopped, and I know all my friends saw this as well. And then eventually the boat started moving again, and no one said anything on the loudspeaker or anything. And we just went on, and I finally could like get my bearings enough. And I asked my friends, like, what was that? And they were like, what was what? And I was like, what was that light? What was the thing that stopped the ferry boat? And they were like, we don't know what you're talking about. I was like, that just happened just now. That just happened. And they were like, we don't know what you're talking about. And one of my friends was like, it was the Coast Guard. And I was like, how did the Coast Guard do that? How did the Coast Guard make lights that moved like that? She was like, I don't know, but that's what it was. So I just started to understand from that experience more than anything else that there are people who do not want to know anything, don't want to even, and I'm positive that they've blocked that completely out of their memory. And so people talk about like nefarious abductions and screen memories, and I think that might be its own thing. I'm not really sure, but I also think people are capable of reorienting that and pushing it into a certain place so that they don't have to deal with it as a part of 3-dimensional reality. So it's like a safety mechanism for people. And I think because I was able to say like, no, that was a thing that happened, and I'm still here, and I'm still alive, and I'm still okay. And so clearly everything's still how it was before that experience, and have a sense of safety through it, that I was able to retain it and understand it a little bit more and not forget it, and I think that's a big part of it.
Well, think about how in families they'll hide or deny sexual abuse or things that have happened in a family, and that's a very physical earth experience. So turn that into the idea that there could be another dimension, or that there's other, not necessarily bodies, but maybe other forms of consciousness or something else out there. If they're going to deny things in their own families that are right there in front of their eyes, how can they not deny things that aren't, I'm seeing that that's the kind of people that were on the boat.
Yeah.
The people that are denying what was real in front of them, because it's easier to do that than to accept or question or be a critical thinker. Like, well, maybe this was something different. I myself am one of those people who shut out that whole UFO thing. And because I was really scared from the experience, and I never wanted to, and it was just like, I was in my 20s, and it was just something where I was saying, well, so is this out there? If I start questioning the thing, then something appears for me that has something to do with the thing, just like you were saying. So I said, I never want this ever to happen again. I never want to talk to anyone about this. I'm just keeping this shut down here. And it's only recently that I'm actually feeling freely about talking with people and not thinking, oh no, she's crazy. I mean, I acted the same way. That I wanted, when anybody said anything about the gray, and then there's so many things they're saying now, like there's civilizations and people have done all these things. So I don't know what of it is craziness and what of it is reality or third dimension. I just know that there's something else going on out there, but I have no words to say what those things are.
Yeah. No, I can't be sure either. All I can know is that my own experiences with these things seem to indicate that they're not physical, and that it's not just that they can defy physics, it's that they can literally, so I've seen them churn. Mostly I see them at night, and mostly they're in the form of lights that do all kinds of crazy things, but I have seen one in the day more than once, and I've seen it churn from one shape into a completely different shape. So for example, first it looked like a jet sort of airliner, and it turned into like not a biplane, like a Cessna, like a little 2-person, 4-person plane, just in broad daylight. So that to me isn't possible unless you're a non-physical, like we would think of a ghost might be able to manifest in the form of like a woman or in the form of like a breeze or so, do all kinds of things. I feel like it might be more similar to that than
Mhm.
it and that being an actual being in an actual ship. So, but that doesn't mean that there aren't actual beings. And I don't know if there are actual
Right.
beings
I
in
don't
actual
know
ships.
either.
But I don't know if I'm ever going to know. But I do know that these things seem to be non-physical, and the sort of dream state, missing time aspect has also happened to me, and more than once, and I also think that's actually happening. And again, I think it's happening on that level of sort of consciousness and soul more than the physical dimension. I don't think my body was taken anywhere, but I do know that I left and I was with other beings, and that they took me far, far, far away, and that we could go as fast as we wanted or as slow as we could stop and look at universes, or we could just zoom past like they were nothing. So light speed didn't have anything to do with it. And we went so far out that we saw what I was told was literally the entire universe, what looks exactly, to me at least, like a figure eight, in the center of which is a giant black nothingness. And then on either side is just light, like spewing out into all sorts of galaxies and spinning Milky Ways and all of these things. And I was like, wow, that's really beautiful. And they're like, yeah, and you live over here. And they pointed way far out to like more towards the edge of like the widest part of the eight. And they were like, way over there. And I was like, that's my home. And they were like, yeah. And we said all the way back to my bed, and I woke up like, whoa. And I was like, I wonder if that was just a really, really intense dream, or if that was something that really happened and that I somehow actually just went out and saw. I was like, I wonder if the universe looks like that. Well, the next day I happened to be at the library. A lot of very strange experiences happen to me in libraries. Like we just were saying earlier, like books seem to come to me and things like to happen in libraries. So it
Teacher,
happened. What's that?
you're a teacher.
Yeah. And I apparently have really good teachers that I can't see. And I found a Nova episode, and I wish I remembered which one. And it just looked cool because it was about galaxies and solar system or something. I was like, neat, I like this. So I brought it home and I was watching it. And I don't remember which part, but there were parts that were just like the exact same thing I had seen the night before, in that experience I had had. And I was like, this was actually real. This is actually what things look like. And it like blew my mind. I was like, I actually went somewhere. So then I was like, well, who are these beings then? I don't know. And then eventually I put them together with the lights I see in the sky and understood that there really is some kind of consciousness that is very friendly, very helpful, and wants to, I think, invite humanity to be more honest with itself, and therefore more in touch with, the truth of what we are and what we can do and what we came here for.
I think that by just even you and I having this conversation, and I'm sure you've had it with many guests on your show, this is letting listeners hear things that they might not have ever heard before, or that they might have had some little touch in their experience and never spoke to anyone about. And there's a lot of, whatever the reason, there's some comfort when like when you and I spoke the first time together, this kindred spirit feeling is very comforting.
Yeah.
And you don't have it with every person that you meet, because every person has a different life and path that they're on. But when you find someone who understands the things that you're talking about, it's such a validating and supporting system. And I think it's important for us to share that kind of information with people, because maybe somebody needs to hear about that right now. Maybe it's something that, maybe a year ago they wouldn't have been able to hear this, but maybe now they're open to these different ideas. I'm wondering about, if we go off onto another topic here, I was wondering about your experiences with working with other people and doing healing work. I always like to ask if our guest has anything they can share. Like some people have like, a tool or an idea or a song or something that might help someone who would like to try something working with their own self. It's not, nobody's selling anything here. We're just trying to share good information. And there's different things that people have that they share that are very valuable, that when a person hears it, I had this with this Randy that was on my show when he said to, trust your inner voice. And it's not, I mean, I always listen to him. I mean, it was just such perfect, powerful few words to hear. And the best advice you could give to someone, trust your inner voice. So what things of that type of nature can you share with our listeners?
Yeah, well, I'll actually share two things, and I think are really helpful, and that 100% of people can do, no matter where they are, no matter what their belief systems are, no matter what their anything, they can do this. And one is, it's a really simple meditation. That's not really a meditation. A lot of people are really attached to the idea that they can't meditate. They're like, oh no, I'm no good at it. Well, 100% of people can meditate, but I understand that the ways that meditation are sometimes presented to people makes them feel like they can't, because they can't do whatever that thing is that the person is presenting. But everyone can meditate. And one really simple, beautiful meditation that is helpful, no matter your state of mind, no matter what's going on in your life, no matter what is to just sit and feel your heart. You can breathe if you want. You can add some deep belly breaths to it, which is never going to hurt you. It's always going to help. And to feel the love in your heart. And if you feel nothing when you go into your heart and ask it to feel love, start thinking of the things and the people and the animals, especially, are really easy. The animals you've loved, the places you've loved, the times in your life that you've loved, and you feel it. The goal is to literally feel. You keep your conscious mind in your heart area as you're going through these things that you love, and just feel that love, that feeling that you can spend as much time with as you want. So you can make this an hour-long meditation if you wanted to just sit somewhere, do deep breaths, and just focus on this love feeling in your heart. That feeling is literally you gathering your, whatever you want to call it, chi, prana, orgone, life force. Love is that, and you have it anytime you want, just by sitting in there and just feeling that love. That can change your day. That can change your mind. You can be like so angry and so hurt, and then you can stop and just feel that love. And all of a sudden you see that from a totally different angle. You're like, well, I'm hurt, but also that person's hurt. Or, like, I'm angry, and also here's what I can do about it. Or, here's, and a lot of your internal guidance comes from that space. It comes from that love. It comes from that energy. So that's another thing. If you're just confused, where do I go? How do I deal with this? You can go into that. You can just remember, here's the people I love. Here's the people who love me. Here's the animals I love. Here's how it feels to love them. And in that space, you can ask that same question. Where do I go? What do I do now? And you may suddenly understand the answer. And people don't realize, I think, that all of us have these abilities, on whatever we want to call psychic or shamanic, or we all have it. It's just how in tune are we with it, and how inviting are we to it, and how much do we choose to continue to brighten it, open it, and sit with it. So that's a really simple one. And the other one that came to mind that I'd love to just quickly share is the forgiveness practice that anyone can do. And I was just thinking of this because when we were talking about Vietnam and our ancestors, and a lot of times I do forgiveness practice on behalf of my ancestors, and I've never done one on behalf of my father and the people who he harmed in Vietnam. And so now I'm like, ooh, I'm going to do that one. And this is how I would go about doing it. And anyone can do it in this way. There's a million different ways to do forgiveness practices. There's a lot of different kinds, but anyone can do this. And the way I do it is I just call forth the soul, heart, mind, and body of whoever I'm doing this with. And I'm not actually summoning anything. Like, I'm not, it's more like inviting the consciousness to come, which knows no space or time. And it doesn't matter if they're dead or alive, that consciousness can still receive and share information and energy with us. And so I would call forth, for example, my father and all of the people in Vietnam who he hurt in any way. Or I could just say any of the people he hurt in the war in any way, all the souls of those people too. And you give some love and some honor and some gratitude that these souls would be willing to come and share with you and interact with you. And then I always go first, and I invite all my ancestors too, and I say, me and all my ancestors would like to ask for your forgiveness. Please forgive us for anything that we've ever done to harm you. Please forgive us for anything we've done in our thoughts and our speech and our deeds in this life, or any life, anywhere, anytime. Please forgive us. We are so sorry we made these mistakes. We're so sorry we hurt you. We know how it feels to be hurt. And this is where you can feel that same love energy, and it feels differently when you're thinking about harming or anybody having been harmed. And so you can feel genuine in that apology. And you just offer that apology and you ask for forgiveness. If you want to, if you're cool with it, you can visualize that coming from all those people to you and kind of washing away any darkness that you had between you, or however you want to see that. And then you offer your forgiveness. My ancestors and I would like to forgive you and all your ancestors for anything that you have ever done to harm us in any way, soul, heart, mind, and body, thought, speech, and deed, this life or any life, anywhere. And you can see that forgiveness going over to them, washing away that darkness between them. And I always like to end with a self-forgiveness, and just to remember our God or source or whatever you think of it, angels, Buddhas, whatever, they all loved us before we ever did anything right or wrong. They have no judgment, right? They just have eternal love for us. So if you can try and feel that forgiveness that existed before anyone ever even did harm and that will last forever, and just try to take that into yourself and forgive yourself. And I just kind of imagine all the souls that are doing that same self-forgiveness, like, let's forgive ourselves. Because that's kind of the hardest part sometimes. You're like, yeah, I'll forgive you, but I'll never forgive me. The highest standards for myself. So that self-forgiveness as a final step is really important to me. And then I just sort of give some love and some honor and gratitude to all the souls that participated and wish them well and say goodbye. And you can do this as many times as you want. If it feels good, keep doing it. You can pick any people. It doesn't have to be as big as like the people in Vietnam who my father harmed. That's a big one. But it could just be like, well, I'm going to do it with my friend I haven't talked to in 5 years, or even someone I talk to every day, but I know that we kind of like have never really like got into our stuff that we need to heal with each other. Like, you can do it. I've had amazing things happen with people who did not know that I was doing forgiveness practice with them, have just called me out of the blue and been like, I was just thinking of you and I just love you and I'm really sorry if I hurt your feelings. And I'm like, this is crazy. Like, our souls know, and this is really happening on the soul level.
This is the thing that our listeners hopefully can grasp, is that all of these things, when we talk about these things, they're really powerful things that are very simple, and they don't require money, and they don't require a therapist or a guru or a doctor of some nature of any kind of thing. They only require us to sit still and rest in the heart. And, the heart is a very powerful organ and instrument. And it is where we hold pains. When we've had terrible trauma, sometimes you feel it directly in your heart, or you feel that tightening up inside. And when we allow ourselves to forgive other people, it's like you say, we've really only done half the work, because we have to forgive ourselves. And I know I'm harder on myself than I am on any other person. And, that's what living and getting, coming into the older years here, it's all about learning and taking these things with us and these lessons and sharing them, because forgiveness is a really powerful tool. And it sounds maybe so silly or something to people. Oh, I'll just send good this. It really works. And I'm not going to share my stories now, but I can tell you from actual fact, it really works. And I think Ram Dass said, was either Ram Dass or Stephen Levine said, you forgive the rapist, but you don't invite them back into your house.
Right.
So it's not like you're sitting there saying, oh, I've forgiven the rapist, now can I make dinner for you? That's not what they're saying.
Right.
They're saying you forgive them, you don't welcome that to happen to you, but you forgive their action. And I think it's a very powerful tool, because, like all these different things that have happened with me too, and this and that, I've been sexually abused, and I have plenty of frightening stories to tell about that, but I've forgiven those people, and I don't feel hatred or anger, or there's something I'm supposed to get back at them because of what they did to me. I don't think what they did to me was correct. And I do have to say, when I had my own children, I said, if anyone did what was done to me to them, I'd go kill them,
Yeah. Right.
Because the mother thing is stronger than anything else, as far as, at least for me. But I'm just saying, I don't hold any of those people like, oh yeah, I can't stand that, but that. No, I just say, I forgive for what they did. And there's something in their makeup that they've done these things that are not correct, that they need to learn from their bad actions, but it's all okay. And some people find that odd, and I don't find it odd, because the other lesson about forgiveness is that when you truly forgive, you don't carry all this extra crappy baggage with you that pulls you down in other situations. And I've had a fabulous sex life, which I won't go into this conversations and sex, but sex has been a very important part of my life that I have enjoyed tremendously, and still do, and find it to be a very important part of my makeup. I didn't think about the man who, raped me with a gun to my head, that now I'm not going to enjoy sex anymore. I never felt that the Buddhist monk, although I have to say, when the Buddhist monk molested me repeatedly during my 7 years old age, I did for many years have a dislike for yoga, and because he would do these put me in these yoga holes and do these weird things to me. So it did take me years to get over the yoga thing, and everybody's yoga this, yoga that. And I'm like, ugh, yoga,
Yeah.
Now I'm like, yeah, yoga's great. I'm just not quite as, I find it seems better for these more long-legged people than my little short 4'11" self. But I don't have any of those things toward yoga. But that was something that I associated with that sexual molestation. So poor yoga got punished for. And now I only think of all the wonders and the amazing beauties that yoga does for people. And they live longer, they're more flexible. It's nothing but a positive thing.
Right.
So,
well, you actually healed from that. And that's why you were able to stop, hating yoga and disassociating maybe or being triggered when yoga came up. And that's the same with the forgiveness idea. It's not, neither of us would ever say, I think, that you should just try not to feel that way. Like, don't feel angry or don't feel hateful or don't feel vengeful. You can't lie about how you feel, and you have to feel what you feel. And so neither of us is saying that. We're saying heal what you feel, go into what you feel and actually be with it and release it. And that doesn't happen because you push it away. It happens because you are honest about it and you're frank with it and you're open to it, and it just comes through. And that simple heart practice, a lot of people, when they do that, even the first time, will just start bawling. And they're like, Lindsey, why am I crying when I do this? I'm like, because you've needed more love than you've ever had. Almost all of us are operating at a love deficit, and we need more love. And so when you go in and you realize you have it and you always have, it's breaks you, because you've been wanting it so bad for so long, and you've been hurt so many times by people and all of this. And so you're healing. When you go do that, you're healing, and a lot of things might come out when you're healing. Tears, anger, fury, that's all good. You just let that out.
And also, I don't know if this was a similar thing for you during childhood, when you were having some of the different intensities in the home and trauma and stuff like this, but it dawned on me that it really was something in the invisible, or the spirit, or the consciousness, or whatever word you want to put this to. Angels, people have different words for all these things. I don't particularly have any word exactly what it is, but there was something else that was always protecting this young Gail child through all those things. I'm here to be able to talk to you about that. There was some other force. It wasn't necessarily a parent that was protecting me, who I would have thought would have been the ones that were protecting you. They weren't there, but something else was. And that's what kept me whole through those things. And I'm very grateful to whatever that is, whether it's your guides or your higher self or whatever, your ancestors, whoever it is, thank you for being there.
Yes. Yeah, that really is true. And the more you experience that and acknowledge it, the more you realize, oh, there's nothing I could ever really have reason to fear in the entirety of the universe, because I am so loved and so protected. That doesn't mean that I won't find myself in situations that are hurtful and terrifying, and that's its whole other thing. Like we said, like you were saying, if I have kids and you hurt my kid, like I'm going to kill you. Like
Right.
to have boundaries, and learning how to have boundaries and when to have boundaries and how to protect yourself. That's important. But truly, your soul and your heart are unbreakable. They're untarnishable. And they're are these things that are protecting you. This is such a random one, but I hated Oprah. I hated talk shows. I hated like soap operas. And I had this friend that was always watching daytime television, Oprah, talk shows, and soap operas. And I was always like, oh my God, again with this crap. Like, I hate this stuff when I was young, And at some point I was sitting there watching Oprah with her, and because that's what she wanted to watch. And I was there, and, I have to watch Oprah. And Oprah was talking about how to get out of a car if it's submerged in water, and how to get away from an abductor if you're a smaller woman who's not physically capable of like fighting them off. What are some of the things you can do? It was like a, episode about how to protect yourself in dangerous situations. So I just so happened to watch it, and I was like, well, this is actually kind of interesting. So I took it in years later. And I mean, like maybe 10 years later, I was walking down the street and I was grabbed by a man, and he started dragging me away. And I was screaming for help. There's people everywhere and nobody would come help me, dragging me away. I'm getting further and further from everyone. I'm like, this is going to go really, really badly. But people don't just grab you and take you unless things are going to go really, really badly. So I stopped. My mind reminded me, remember what Oprah told you? And Oprah told me that you become a dead weight, because when you're struggling and fighting, like I had been the whole time this man was dragging me away, you're actually providing like a kinetic energy for them to more easily carry you. And I don't know exactly why that's true, but it's true. When you become a dead weight, if anyone's ever tried to carry someone who's passed out, or otherwise, it's very, very difficult, because a dead weight is just heavier. There's no kinetic energy at all. So now just 100% of their weight you're trying to move, and it's very difficult. So I remembered that. And that also came with this added tip. Like, you have one chance at this. You have one chance to become a dead weight, because once he knows the trick, he'll like know how to, counteract it or something. So I like had to prepare, because becoming a dead weight is actually a lot harder than you think. Everything in your whole body and mind is like, you never just let yourself fall and hit the ground. That would hurt really bad. You might break something. So I had to like mentally prepare for it. I remembered that, and I used that trick. I became a dead weight, and he dropped me, and I was able to get away, because I happened to watch Oprah 10 years before with my friend, which I hated doing. So I was like, and so that friend coincidentally fell off. She drove off a bridge into a river. And because that same exact episode that we watched together, knew how to get out of her car and survive that situation. So like, there's a reason why we watched this episode of Oprah that day. And that's a very maybe silly example, but that's absolutely true. I would have never watched it otherwise, except for her. She made me watch it, and it saved my life. Right. So there's things going on. That was just one example. And when you see this over and over again in your life, you just have to admit, oh man, I am deeply loved and deeply protected.
And it may be by something other than a human being. You have no idea where the love is coming from.
Absolutely.
Could be your ancestors, could be, we don't know. But just let it in. Absolutely. Let it protect you. So we're getting kind of towards the end of our show, but I always like to ask if there's any other things, and I just want to quickly look at my little question list to see if there was an area we didn't talk about. Maybe we could finish with you about talking about, because we were originally talking about truth and which we're having here today, truth. Trust and surrender, which I think we actually did cover in this discussion we just had. So I'm wondering about this last subject, which was about gratitude, acknowledgement of self-power, and what is needed today to do to be able to service and help others. Because after reading your bio and information about you, I felt like we were also a kindred spirit, in that my most satisfying feeling is whenever I can do something to help someone, whether it's, giving them a ride, or, I've helped people in other cultures. It's sometimes money is a good thing to have, to be able to buy food for people that are in need of food or clothing or things like this. So there's many ways we can do things to serve and help people. I used to think somehow I was going to do some grandiose, giant, big thing, and then I realized the best help was just one by one, whoever you can help. Helping our friend Ed, who was just in need of help, or helping people in other countries, whatever it is. I shipped books to Romania once to someone I never met, whose daughter had no access to all kinds of books. So I sent a whole box of books to them. I've never met them. I don't know who they are. They contacted me from somebody, and I sent books out. So I don't know, we all do different little things. So sometimes I feel it's a material way of helping. Sometimes it's helping with a shamanic blessing or healing, which I see you do also, this kinds of things. So I was wondering if you'd want to just share that, and we could end on that, on those notes.
Yeah, I do think, our souls are sort of the boss. And I think we're in this society, especially, led away from our souls, and we're led to, especially the materialist worldview is like the dominant one for sure right now. And that doesn't even acknowledge soul. And so, so I think it's really easy for us to forget these really simple things that are inside of us, like helping people. You just go back to remembering, if you haven't done this in a while, what you remember when you were a kid, how fun it was. I mean, we used to do May Day, right? And we would make these little paper flower holder bouquet things, and we would find flowers and put them in and like hang them on someone's door and knock and run away. And like, that was so fun because it's not a flaming pile of dog poop. It's a nice bouquet of flowers from a child, and that feeling was so fun and so good because it felt great to make someone else feel good. And we still have this. That never goes away because our soul loves it. Our soul's purpose, in fact, is to come here, heal ourselves as much as possible, because the more we heal ourselves, the more clear of a channel we are to that soul level of being, whatever it is and however it comes through us, and then to share with others in whatever ways we can, and find whatever it is in our way to help people. And it's gonna look different for everybody. For me, it looks like this, and this is the way I've been guided and led to interact with people and to offer whatever I can to them to help them on their journeys. But it's different for everyone. It can be, you're working at KFC and you're like offering people a smile when you see them, or eye contact, or just like a little wave, or like the nicest interaction you can muster for them that day. That can be it. Like, it doesn't have to be anything outside of where you are. And that's the beautiful thing about it, is that everybody has it. Everybody can do it. It doesn't matter where or when or how. And it just feels good. It feels good for everyone. And it ripples out in ways that we're never gonna be able to measure. Who knows where it goes, right? It's that whole like butterfly effect thing. Like, that just keeps going into an infinity. And you can create it whenever you want. That's like a superpower.
And it's abundant.
Yes.
It's abundant, and it's a wonderful thing. And I often tell people, because sometimes people say to me, why are you giving all that away to this person? What do they're on this kind of thing, like you're supposed to give, if you give it to this person, then that same person is supposed to give something back to you. Mm-hmm. Well, that's not the way. The way is that you give freely, and at the time when all of a sudden you need it, it comes back when you need it. And I've seen it through my whole lifetime. So I never have to worry. I know that if I give away my last something or other, not to worry, because another one is going to come back from some other place and some other person and some other, some other experience. It always returns. It's sort of like putting, it's like investing in something, that really always comes baring
Yeah.
And it is exactly like you say. It can be the little things like, helping somebody in a store, or just bringing a smile to somebody. This has been a very stressful, out there in the world a lot. And so when you go out there, if you can bring positive energy. I watched your show with the woman with the car driving, the Hawaiian lady, I think she was, or
oh yeah, Kathy.
Yes. And she was talking about how when you get into traffic and everybody, and I'm one of those where all of a sudden, if the traffic, I become a nasty,
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking to myself, she's got the right idea here, that even when you go into the traffic, just say, I'm in traffic, it's going to be fine. I get all like New Yorkified traffic, just go with the flow. It's traffic. So you're in the traffic. Eventually you'll be out of the traffic.
Right.
And when the person, I'm trying to teach myself, I always have the issue of kind of absorbing people's negativity when they throw it at me. So if there's something happens in an interaction on a car and somebody goes by and then yells something nasty, all of a sudden I feel like, So how to have like sort of a mirror in front of you to bounce back that negativity, and then just to be able to send, I hope that person has a better day than they're having right now. So I thought that was lovely advice your guest had talked about, because that's an everyday occurrence in
Yes.
everyday life.
Yeah, and it's true. There's nothing you can do about it anyway. Like the traffic is gonna happen anyway, right? And so but why add to it and make it even worse and make it even, people can feel it's we're all I people are like, I'm an empath, I'm not. We're all empaths. It's just we're in various degrees of blocking that out or not blocking it out, right? Then if you're in trauma and if you're in pain and you're in frustration, all that, you have a lot of layers of blockage between you and really directly. And that's kind of what we've been talking about, right? Like peeling those layers away, healing yourself, and being an even more wide open sort of channel of connection to that source. But we're all that. We all have that. And so whether we like it or not, when we're sitting in traffic, and I've worked very hard to become much less angsty and angry in traffic. But when we're screaming, I'm like, well, no one can hear me anyway, but they can feel it. Like there's somewhere in their being, they're getting a little bit more agitated and angry too. Or if I do the opposite and I'm like, cool, whatever, I love you. I hope you have a good day. I hope you get to where you're going safely. Like have my chill music on or whatever, like continue connecting with my heart in whatever ways I can. Then that's going to create that. People are going to feel that instead. And then that's going to ripple out too. And by no means am I saying that I'm perfect or like always in that state of mind. I have bad days. I have bad moments.
Right.
I can be an asshole. Just like
Yeah,
everyone.
we're all human. We're all human.
Right.
But
Right.
the last note I want to say is, when I was 14, I was at the Woodstock Festival in 1969.
Yeah.
And I was in the front, about the 10th row, front row center there. And left on the wood fence that was like the border of the stage, this guy got up there and he painted the three most powerful words. And it's really the thing that we always really need to remember. And it's that we are one. And we are all connected. So the better we can make ourselves and present ourselves out in the world, the better energy and positiveness that we're bringing with us to the other people around us. And Woodstock was a proven thing to show that 500,000 people under diverse conditions could all get along and be in peace and love and harmony, and show that we were all one there. So I do believe that's like powerful words. So I just lastly want to say, can you tell us anything about the book that you just published recently that I know is available on Amazon, and we'll end on that note. So just tell us about your book.
Yeah, my book and all of them are there on Amazon under Lindsey Scharmyn or Corey Scharmyn. But if you find All Endings Are Beginnings by Lindsey Scharmyn, you should be able to find the rest too. And this one I am very happy with. This book and the last two books before I have all been channeled from wherever, source, God, whatever, from beyond. They've been handed to me and I've been lucky enough to birth them into the world, and it's a beautiful thing. But this one is so special because it acts as an oracle for anybody who wants. Like if you don't want to learn tarot and you don't want to learn I Ching or whatever, those are beautiful tools. Any oracle tool is a beautiful tool. But if you don't want to learn those and you still want to receive answers and responses to your questions, or to just get a daily dose of whatever sort of directive or guidance, this book is perfect. And all the people I know who have gotten it use it in this way, and I use it in this way even, to just ask it and open it to a page and there's the answer. And so it's a lot of little sort of snippets of channeled nuggets of guidance and source wisdom. And it's, it can be used that way, or it can be like a nice coffee table, or you can read it all the way through too. It's whatever you want it to be. But it's really nice support in that way. And it's a beautiful little book, and I'm just grateful to have been a part of its existence.
Well, I want to say, you said the magic sales words for me, which is, it's the kind of book that you can open up and get an answer to something. I have a couple books like that. One of them is called Thinking in Destiny by Harold Percival. And it's like 1,000-page book. And it was written a very, very long time ago. well, I'll have a thought and I just open it up and it opens to that page of what I need to know. So I will be ordering your book on Amazon, and I will talk to you about scheduling a tarot reading because I really enjoy getting to know you. And this is the gratefulness of doing these podcasts and being a guest on shows like yours, is that getting to meet kindred spirits. So thank you so much for being here today with us on a Small, Medium at Large podcast.
Oh, thank you so much, Gail. It's been beautiful. And I feel the same about you. So I'm really grateful to be connected. And I look forward to anything we do together.
Yes, I know this is only the beginning, so I'm looking forward to more future talks together. And I want to thank our listeners today for spending the day with us. I would hope that you'll be able to have time to subscribe to our YouTube channel. There's lots of shows you might not have seen yet that will all be there in the list. Any of the information from Lindsey will be in our description, so you'll know her website and the titles of her books and things and ways to know how to connect in case you want to get a tarot reading with her. And we also want to tell you that, remember, just like today, stories can heal. So share your stories. And together, I think we can have our little mwah. And I'll see you again. Okay. Have a wonderful, wonderful week, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.